It's clear by now that Trump's imposition of tariffs has been a disaster. The market has crashed, wiping away all gains since Trump took office. Companies are laying off employees by the hundreds. Fears of a recession are reaching a fever pitch. And far from spooking other countries into coming to the negotiating table, they're actually going around the United States and entering into new trade agreements without us, including, by the way, with China. New reporting suggests that Japan and South Korea are teaming up with China to respond to our tariffs imposed by Trump. Because that's apparently what we want right now. At a time when American superiority is threatened by China, Trump is driving other countries into the arms of China. But it's also true that Trump's uniquely and acutely aware of how damaging high costs can be. He himself admitted after the election that the reason that he won was because costs were too high. In fact, we've spoken about this for months. This global phenomenon of high inflation, and therefore high costs, is responsible for nearly every incumbent government across the globe losing majorities or outright losing power themselves. And so, given how disastrous these tariffs are on the economy, and given how potent the issue of high costs are, it would lend itself to reason that Trump would want to avoid this like the plague. Even for somebody who needs to protect his ego and can't bring himself to admit fault because he views any capitulation as a sign of weakness, even he can see how disastrous this is and should want to cut his losses as quickly as possible. So the question becomes, why barrel ahead? The answer is that Trump doesn't care, because what he stands to gain is greater than what he stands to lose. He wants blanket tariffs on every country in hopes that, in an effort to remove them, the countries each offer to give him something, and that something usually stands to benefit him personally. Like, think about where he's employed this strategy already. The law firms, for example. He imposes blanket punishment on them through his use of an executive order, and then one by one they capitulate to get themselves off his bad side. And that capitulation includes giving him between $40 million and $100 million in pro bono legal services. And by the way, you better believe that they're also not going to go after him anymore in the courts. That means that he has neutralized them. He owns them. And in turn, one of the most damaging sectors for him, the courts, suddenly becomes a little bit more friendly. Or how about the news networks capitulating? You've got ABC News, possibly CBS doing the same thing with 60 Minutes, both involved in settling these frivolous lawsuits. You think those networks are going to be as hostile after paying him millions and millions of dollars? Probably not. How about the tech billionaires? You've got Mark Zuckerberg immediately revamping Meta's content moderation policies and moving its fact-checking from California to the much more neutral state of Texas. Jeff Bezos also neutered his own Washington Post. He spent $40 million on a Melania Trump documentary that I'm sure tens of people enjoyed watching. And we can go on, but it's the same strategy over and over. Trump preemptively targets the entities or people who threaten him, knowing that the only way they can crawl out of that hole that he's placed them in is if they capitulate and give him something that benefits him. It's worked with law firms and media companies and tech billionaires and universities, and now he's doing it with literally every country in the world. He wants them to beg, because whatever they give him in response to that begging will ultimately benefit him. This isn't just getting some university somewhere to capitulate. It is getting a world leader on behalf of an entire country that is valuable for him. Certainly more valuable as far as he's concerned than the pain that he's causing. Because remember, the pain that he's causing doesn't impact him. So at the end of the day, he doesn't give a shit. He doesn't need to rely on his 401k. He's not drawing from his 401k. He doesn't need to worry about high costs from the tariffs. He doesn't have to worry about the impacts to housing or rent or groceries or cars or electronics or food. None of that impacts him. He's a billionaire who doesn't pay for anything. You all suffering is a price that he's willing to have you pay. And so he'll wait for these other world leaders to petition the king and grovel with their offerings that will ultimately expand his own power and his own influence. All the while, we are the collateral damage. We all get thrown under the bus. 350 million people suffer so that one man can benefit. This is the story of Trump's presidency. Donald Trump looks out for one person, Donald Trump. But here comes the hopeful part. We are all wise to his plan. There's a reason, for example, that the Trump administration decided to revoke the nomination of Elise Stefanik to be UN ambassador. It's because they were afraid that Republicans would lose a seat in a district that Trump himself won by 21 points in November. And they saw what happened in Wisconsin, where Trump-endorsed conservative candidate Brad Schimmel lost by 10 points in a 50-50 state. They saw what happened in Florida, where even though Democrats lost 2 seats, they saw an average 16-point swing to the left. And now they have seen millions and millions of Americans take to the streets just this past weekend. And this matters. It matters because this administration derives its power from the perception that it is untouchable, that it can act with impunity. The fact that Americans are standing up and turning out and fighting back threatens all of that, threatens their entire power structure. I know that it doesn't feel like we have much to celebrate right now, but the energy, the momentum, and the enthusiasm is only on one side right now, and it's not Donald Trump's.